Recording in progress. This has to be, I think this is the record for the furthest I've traveled virtually. I've, done interviews with brothers in South Africa and Eastern Europe, but I think Romania has got to be up there. Anyways, welcome so much, Vladimire Hilca. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Cameron.
So, I learned about you I learned about what you're here to talk about, Aether Lodge, through Twitter first, then, Instagram, then the website. And, I want to preface this by saying, this podcast is not meant to give financial advice or investment advice or anything like that. Brothers or anybody, for God's sakes, don't take my advice. But it is a fascinating area, which is NFTs, blockchain, all of that. And, it surprised me that more Masonic groups and organizations haven't got involved in this space. They've got involved on an individual basis. I've heard Masons talking about investing in cryptocurrency, NFTs, but on an organizational level, for example, I don't know of any lodges or grand lodges that are accepting cryptocurrency, like any type of cryptocurrencies as payment for dues or something to that effect, like Bitcoin, for example. Just out of curiosity, are you aware of any lodges or grand lodges that accept Bitcoin, for example, as payment?
At the moment, not, but I can tell you that our senior warden is this IT wizard who's crazy about blockchain, and he tries to push a platform in our lodge that we can pay our fees in Bitcoin, and essentially, instead of having a bank account, have a Binance account and pay our fees in the Binance account. He's crazy about this stuff.
And that to me, again, I don't know a ton about this field. I'm hoping you can teach me and everybody else a lot more about it, but it just seems like this is one of those examples of, there's a whole world outside of our lodges, and sometimes Freemasons forget about that. And, the idea that there's new things happening that should be investigated and examined, and such as, paying dues in Bitcoin. It seems to me like that would be equivalent to in the late 1990s, sending out lodge correspondence by email. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, it's just another thing that's different that may be able to provide some utility and service to Freemasonry that should be explored. Well, let me know how that goes with your senior warden if the lodge does start to accept Bitcoin as payment for its dues.
We'll definitely do so.
But let's start with the basics. So I met you via the Twitter account for Aether Lodge. I'll leave a link in the description. What is Aether Lodge?
Well, Aether Lodge was born as a fun project to bring both Freemasons and the civil society closer to the whole idea of Metaverse, a possible direction in which we're heading as a species. And to try and essentially, how we thought about it was, hey, wouldn't it be cool to bring Freemasonry closer to the civil society and show that we're not this dubious society that some might believe we are, and we're actually some pretty cool guys who teach and learn a lot and do charity. And the way I thought about talking to the younger generations about this is on their own language, because the younger generations nowadays are crazy about blockchain and the metaverse and NFTs and the whole virtual spectrum. So I thought, hey, why not talk about Freemasonry on their own language?
Well, so let's start with the different definitions. What is an NFT?
Well, it stands for a non-fungible token. It's essentially You know how you have Bitcoin? There are around 19 million Bitcoins around the world and inside ledgers, and every single Bitcoin is identical to the other, right? This is a fungible token. A non-fungible token would be a completely unique Bitcoin. I'm giving Bitcoin as an example. It can't be Bitcoin, but it can be anything like an image or some lyrics to a song or a video or anything which is purely unique and will never be able to be reproduced, essentially.
So is it that my curiosity about NFTs, because it's that moment. I think there's a moment for a lot of things where something can move from being fungible to non-fungible on like an emotional level, which I think is kind of what an NFT does. So for example, you could, let's use famous person as an example, like let's say some superstar, some movie star, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He eats at a restaurant and he uses a napkin at the restaurant. Well, at the time the restaurant purchased that napkin, it was probably fungible, right? In the sense that it's a unique napkin. You could, if you really wanted to, assign each napkin that came from where they bought it a number and make them irreplaceable, but its uniqueness wasn't tied into its price because they didn't care about it as a specific napkin. It was just one napkin out of a million. They could have used anyone in its place. But as soon as, say, The Rock uses it, well, now any of his fans may have an emotional attachment to that napkin because it's become non-fungible. It's the only one he used at that restaurant. So
exactly.
So it seems that that's kind of, from what I understand, that's what an NFT is kind of trading on. It's an emotional attachment to something that creates a value in it because it's unique.
Exactly. It's the unicity that counts, and knowing that you own something that nobody else has. It's your particular thing, and it will always be until you transfer it, sell it, do whatever with it. But it will be your identity, so to say.
And then how does that, I think for a lot of people, where the confusion comes from is, it's like the right click memes that you would see, because with so to use again, The Rock's napkin, I mean, theoretically, somebody could act in a fraudulent manner and purchase a whole bunch of napkins that look exactly the same and sell them all as The Rock's napkin. But eventually, it's not in their interest to do so because they'll get caught and they'll drive down the price of the real one because no one will know. But at least in theory, if a waiter or something swipes the napkin off the table, they have physical possession of it, and they can look at it, they can sell it, they can keep it, they can do whatever they want with it. So there's a recognition of it. I think for a lot of people, the challenge with an NFT is, how do you own something digital that can be, when there's really no such thing as digital scarcity? I mean, well, there is, but for practical purposes, you can right click on an image a million times type of thing. Like how can you own a digital property, and what does it mean to own something digital versus owning something physical?
Well, the thing is, you don't really own just the image, you own what is behind it. You essentially own a piece of code which is unique. You own it, and it will always be stored inside your wallet, an electronic wallet. And people can know, for example, if you're a public person, you can say, hey, I publicly declare that this is my wallet. It contains the said NFT and it is in my possession. The piece of code which translates on the screen as an image belongs to me. It is in my possession. It is in my wallet. That's essentially how you guarantee the unicity and that you own the real deal. And further down the line, if you transact it, if you send it to another person, this is a public transaction which is seen on the blockchain. And one person can simply verify that wallet X belonging to a famous person transferred an NFT to wallet Y belonging to whoever. And now everybody knows that the piece of code belongs to wallet Y, essentially.
Yeah. So to use another example, it seems to me that a good way to think about an NFT is, so a friend of mine, she really loved Harry Potter. She loved those books. And there was a nature preserve that I would often visit where you could buy an animal, right? And one of the animals you could buy was an owl. And that didn't mean you could actually physically take an owl from the preserve and, bring it home with you. But if I forgot how much, but you've paid them money and you got a certificate saying, owl X belongs to so-and-so, belongs to my friend. And it was a way, obviously, for the nature preserve, it was a way to fundraise money to help those animals. So the money that you gave them went to support the animals. But what you got in return was a certificate saying, you own owl X. And really what you actually own isn't the owl itself, you own the certificate. And It's just a way to support the nature preserve. And it seems like with an NFT, you don't actually own the image. The image or the images or the song lyrics or whatever it is still something that anybody can, unless there's a copyright law, which is a separate issue, can right click, can copy, can look at, can engage with. But the code, the certificate that confirms your ownership of it, that's what you actually own.
Together with the intellectual property for the said NFT. That's also very important.
Is that true in every case? Does the intellectual property always travel with the NFT when it's purchased, or does that depend on whoever produces the NFT itself?
Well, it very much depends on who produces the NFT. When you're buying an NFT from a large project, you're essentially entering a contract with them, and you purchase the NFT, and they can start having several clauses, such as you gain full ownership of the intellectual property, or you gain partial ownership of the intellectual property. For example, if I were to issue an NFT, I would offer almost full intellectual property with that NFT. One thing as a project owner, as a developer, that I would like to be shielded by is for somebody to purchase an NFT, purchase the intellectual property together with it, and then use it, for example, to promote a fascist movement or a Nazi movement. And I, as a project, would like to shield myself from such a case. Most projects do this. They offer full intellectual properties. You can exploit, promote, do whatever with your NFT, but you cannot do Nazi or fascism propaganda or communist propaganda or whatever, something which can be dangerous, immoral, illegal. That's when they can essentially sue you for doing something similar to this.
And, from your, well, I guess the next step to move on to, because you talked about it a few times, is, so I go and I purchase, for example, an NFT from Aether Lodge, or I suppose anywhere, right, from NFT. And then you've talked about how, so basically I'm receiving as part of the purchase the code that links to that specific image,
exactly,
and the intellectual property, depending on the circumstances. And that code is placed in my, you described it, it's placed in your wallet and it's represented on the blockchain. So those are my next two questions is, what is the blockchain and what is a digital wallet? Sure.
It's usually a very complicated concept, and I'll try to be as simple as possible. The blockchain is a financial ledger, completely decentralized. And inside this financial ledger, you have a history of all the transactions and all the assets that are inside that ledger, so to say. Now you take all of these and you organize them in blocks. That's how you would visualize them. So in any minute, I, as a user, can have access to the blockchain. I cannot edit it, but I can view a certain block and see inside that block what transactions were made, what assets belong to that block, what wallet address owns those assets, and so on and so forth.
Is it just divided into blocks for ease of use? Because if you actually just had the entire blockchain, it'd be but millions of transactions. Like, is it done that way so computers can actually engage with it in a meaningful way and not have to scroll through every transaction since the beginning of time or beginning of blockchain?
Yes, it's one of the reasons. It's easier to track when in blocks.
And then what is a digital wallet?
A digital wallet. It's essentially like a bank account, which you own. It is yours. But instead of having fiat currencies such as dollars or euros or whatever, you have cryptocurrencies inside it.
And, so what would you, I guess, maybe some projects of which I'm not aware, but I haven't really seen anything like this. And again, we talked about this earlier, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, right? Satoshi Nakamoto and whoever that is, in 2009, I believe is when it popped.
Eight, yes. And nobody knows who Satoshi is. It's a fun fact. Nobody knows if it's a person or an entire organization. It's essentially a ghost.
Could be a Mason, for all we know. That'll get conspiracy theorists starting. Why do you think? Why do you think that is? Like, what are the benefits to, or why do you think Satoshi Nakamoto, whomever that is, or they are, chose to create Bitcoin anonymously?
I think it's a matter of privacy on one hand, and on the other hand, the whole idea of blockchain is meant to represent decentralization. No higher organism having control over it, but the community. So if one important actor, secret services, I don't know, I'm going into conspiracy theories as well here, would know the identity of the creator, maybe they could pressure the creator into manipulating the blockchain in such manner to serve the interests of a third party. This is how I like to imagine the reason for all the secrecy and the privacy behind the creator.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty plausible, right? I also wonder if, the benefit of doing anything anonymously is the work will speak for itself, right? Because if a celebrity or anybody, creates something, then people will judge whatever is created, not only based on what it is, but on whatever they know about that person. So if he's had, it allows kind of the work to speak for itself, I think, which might also be a potential benefit of it.
And besides that, the beauty with blockchain is it offers you the option to be fully anonymous, but it's tempting to be fully anonymous, but then at the same time, you have the option to not take advantage and be a public figure. For example, in our case with Aether Lodge, there are a ton of projects out there, even Masonic themed projects, created by an anonymous team. Nobody knows anything about them. So they can easily promise things, sell products, and simply vanish at some point. The way we chose to do things was to fully expose ourselves from the beginning. You know, the scapegoat. In case anything goes wrong, you know, you need a face to punch, I would say. So being public also offers a bit of credibility in this field, in a field where you have by default the choice to be anonymous.
Yeah, no, and I think it's that choice that is key, right? Because if you have to be public, then being public doesn't it doesn't prove anything. But if you're choosing to be public, that does, I think, lend itself more, that does provide a level of security, that at least you know the people behind it, and you know, and you can contact them and speak with them and that type of thing. Yes. You know,
it's not bulletproof, but it's an extra layer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, going back to one of the biggest concerns I have, and, you know, I started at the top talking about lodges and grand lodges, you know, should look at and consider being more open to, for example, taking payment in cryptocurrency, and being involved in this, because it's just another area of the world that Freemasonry should be involved in. You know, if I had to steelman the other side of it, one of my major concerns about payment through cryptocurrency is, you know, kind of how volatile it is, and how quick you know, Bitcoin or anything, how quick your secretary would have to be. So if I, you know, pay my dues through cryptocurrency on Monday, but then, you know, Wednesday it crashes, if the secretary hasn't pulled that money out, right, I might have ended up, the value of what I paid him could have dropped substantially. So I guess what would be the counter to that for, you know, your senior warden? If he's looking at paying through cryptocurrency, how do you make sure that the value that you're getting is equivalent to the dues that you're trying to pay?
Well, one could simply use what is called a stable coin. A stable coin is a cryptocurrency that will always, no matter what, have the value of $1 or €1 or whatever fiat currency it is pegged to. Or it would be 0.999980 to $1 or some sort like that. So it would be pretty simple to use a stable coin.
And in terms of the, you know, again, going back to NFTs and Aether Lodge, you know, what are some of the risks associated with this, but what are some of the benefits to either any Masonic jurisdiction, even at the lodge level, you know, engaging in or creating or marketing an NFT?
I would begin with the risks. I would say that the biggest risk is that people essentially won't like it and won't adopt it. It's essentially that simple. If they are not buying into a product, well, the product is meant to fail. And then it means that maybe this time, in these times, Freemasonry is not prepared to extend its reaches in the metaverse, for example. And maybe we should be waiting for another 5, 10, or 20 years, or forever.
And do you think that if that were to be the case, is that an issue on the side of Freemasonry and Freemasons, or is that an issue on the side of the world? So would that be that the world isn't ready to accept Freemasonry into the metaverse and into the NFT world, or is that more an issue of Freemasons not doing sufficient amounts to promote the NFT? And, you know, like where do you think the fault would lie if it doesn't work out?
You know, usually the fault doesn't really lie on one side. The thing with Freemasonry, you know what they say, we're a society that's both traditional and progressive at the same time. And this helped us throughout the years. While when it comes to the civil society, Freemasonry, especially in Western countries, is very out there in the public eye, as far as I can see. There are public events, brothers stroll at parades with their regalia on, for example. I know the Shriners movement is heavily involved in civil society charity, for example. And I would not see the civil society rejecting Freemasonry inside the metaverse. On the other hand, civil society doesn't really have much of a control over the metaverse. That's the whole thing. It's you could simply imagine if there's enough room for both the civil society and Freemasons on the planet, it's very easy to be enough room in the metaverse as well.
Yeah, I do want to talk about this as well. I should have got one more definition from you at the start. What is the metaverse?
This is getting complicated. It's essentially a rendered virtual world. Imagine Minecraft or Second Life or whatever game where people, humans, using VR hardware can navigate inside that virtual world, and they can interact with other people. It essentially, the main selling point of this virtual world is it facilitates the interactions between people who are very far apart geographically speaking.
And I think that's really a key for, hopefully that's something that Freemasonry has learned during the pandemic, where most of lodges were shut down. You saw a real move to virtual meetings of different types. Sometimes it was education. Some jurisdictions actually had proper virtual meetings online, where you could interact with people you had visitors from all over the world showing up at your meetings, on Zoom or GoToMeeting, whatever it might have been.
Yeah. Sorry, please.
Oh, and is that something that Aether Lodge is seeing? Are you getting interest in communicating with brothers from globally? And what's the response been like from Freemasons?
To begin with, COVID was actually one of the first steps that made us think about a virtual Masonic lodge, or not a virtual Masonic lodge, but a virtual Masonic presence, because in our case, we were under heavy lockdown and we were not allowed to meet, period. So we moved everything on Zoom, but the only thing we were able to do was to just discuss. And that was about it. And that was the moment when the need for a deeper level of interaction arose. Okay, I will agree that you can't go deeper as a level of interaction than the physical one, say meeting inside the body of a lodge. But you can have also this whole idea of meeting sort of online, sort of virtually, sort of having a guest. You're in Canada and having a guest from Australia and New Zealand and another one from India and so on and so forth at the same time, without the expenses, of course. So yeah, we began from COVID. You were asking me earlier, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, yeah. So in terms of that global reach, how have you found the global reach in relation to Aether Lodge? Have you received a lot of interest from Masons and non-Masons kind of throughout the world? What's the response been like?
When it comes to Masons, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, that Freemasonry is both traditional and progressive. I got in touch with brethren who are both some of them are very traditional and some other are super progressive. So, we've had a bit of mixed reviews. Some of the more conservative members didn't even want to hear about such a heresy, and what's this whole thing? We could simply meet inside lodges, physical lodges, until we die. We don't need something to substitute that. While the more progressive side of Freemasonry was super hyped about it. They loved the idea. They are aware that a lot of businesses and a lot of societies are starting to extend their reach in the metaverse. You have Meta, you have Adidas, you have a ton of companies. And they're aware that, hey, if we did this whole Freemasonry in the virtual spectrum, what would it cost us? There are mostly only things to gain. And it does not mean that one would have to sacrifice the traditional physical Freemasonry, the physical meetups. So people, depending on where they come from, their social background, their age, the reviews were mixed. Some people hated it. Some people absolutely loved the idea.
Well, I think that's for the more conservative members. I would describe that as I call it to one thing Freemasonry, which is something I hate, and I think it's really harmful. It's where, and you see this with older members a lot, but sometimes even with younger members, where they have this idea that Freemasonry is one thing, and whatever that one thing is, that's everything that's not that is heresy or sacrilege or whatever it might be. So, we saw that during the pandemic. I remember when our Grand Lodge came out with go-to meetings and said every district now has what's called a go-to meeting link. And if you're a lodge in that district, you can use this to host virtual get-togethers. And a whole bunch of Masons were saying, well, Freemasonry is in-person meetings. And I was like, that's one thing that Freemasonry is, and it's incredibly important, and that should never go away. But that's not exclusively what Freemasonry is. Freemasonry can also be virtual meetings and go-to meetings and social events and degrees and business meetings and these podcasts. And Freemasonry can and should be, everything should be equally important, right? There's nothing more important than anything else. And I do think, Masons who would say, well, Freemasonry is exclusively an in-person meeting, they're doing that. It's like that old expression, right? If everything you have is a hammer, if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yes.
If you can exclusively see Freemasonry as an in-person meeting, you're going to miss opportunities to grow and expand the craft outside of that in a lot of ways. And I've seen that with other things too. I had a brother say to me, well, Freemasonry is social activities. It's getting together for barbecues. That's what's important. And I was like, well, that's important, but it's not any more or less important than the physical in-person business meetings, So I think that's one thing that does hold Freemasonry back. It's members get into their head Freemasonry is one thing, and they miss opportunities to expand the craft outside of that.
Exactly. And there's one more thing I wanted to add. In my case, at least, the best place I find Freemasonry is inside myself. Because I see it more than meetups, more than the ritual, more than the magic of the ritual. I see it as a state of spirit in which I try to transcend every day and try to be introspective about it. So, okay, it was bad during COVID because we couldn't have the meetups, because they're fun, they're nice. We do the ritual, we have a laugh, we have a drink. It's nice, we socialize. But it was not all that bad because I kept trying to practice Freemasonry inside, which is, for me at least, the most important aspect. And then, of course, isolated, I could meet with a few brethren and have a beer, have a chat, and also keep this whole social side alive at the same time.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? I always say Freemasonry is everything. which is kind of a funky definition, but it's not just one thing. Everything is important. Right? Everything is equally important, whether it's the social aspect or the virtual aspect or the in-person aspect. You should care about it all equally because it all grows the craft if it's done well, you know?
Exactly. And the craft gains a lot of its strength through diversity. Yeah, because we have people from all walks of life, all beliefs, all sorts of social statuses, which meet together inside the room and they cooperate towards the exact same goal. So it's unity in diversity.
Absolutely, right? I think that's 100% correct. The going back to Aether Lodge, how are because this is something I wanted to talk about, the NFTs themselves, not well, I guess the code and then the images that are connected with the code, how are those created, and what are those, like, are they, is it an artist creating multiple images? Is it a computer program? How are these images being created? And if or anybody were to purchase an NFT, you know, is the image that's associated with that, you know, whose work is that? Or is it an AI's work type of thing?
It's a combination, actually, because the journey begins when we sit at the table and we think about a concept, and inside that concept, we need to make sure that we target both the Freemasons and both the civil society, both the more junior and the more senior members of society. And then we go to our design team and we tell them, because in my case, I can barely draw a straight line. I go to my design team and tell them, okay, this is my concept. This is what I think about it should look. I want something funky. I want something funny. I want to have fun. That's the whole thing. And then the design team designs elements of one picture. And for example, they design the regalia, they design the handwear, the headwear, the clothing, the background, but they design all individually. Now, these are called layers. After we have all the layers, we go to the IT team, and then they write a code which randomizes all the layers and place them together in pictures, full pictures, essentially. So we can have an illustration of a worshipful master holding a gavel, and an illustration of a worshipful master holding a sword and a pair of shades on his eyes. So that's what I meant by saying it's a mix of both the AI and the art part.
So the initial design is done with the design team, but then the layers are AI generated?
They are not AI generated. They're put together by a code, essentially, by an AI. Yeah, they're put together. We need to feed the machine the layers, because if the machine does not have the layers, it cannot work. It cannot create.
And, you know, so then from that initial work, I'm assuming it was yourself and, you know, your colleagues listed on the website, which is linked in the description. Where did what were you trying to communicate when you created the basic elements of the NFT image? Like, how did you decide upon these images, and what was the thinking process behind them?
Well, the idea was to make fun. We started from making fun of the Masonic preconceptions all around the world. So in order to make fun, of course, we cannot be sober in our design. So why not we tried to stay as fun as possible. So therefore we chose to go with a gorilla as our main character, because this is not a traditional lodge, it's a virtual lodge, and you can go as crazy as you want inside it. But at the same time, we wanted to respect traditional elements. We wanted to be faithful to the regalia. We wanted to be faithful to all the gavels or the columns, so on and so forth. So we mixed this whole being serious with being funny about the whole metaverse thing and the making fun of the preconceptions. And we ended up having a fun gorilla, which can sometimes be an EA, sometimes be a worshipful master, sometimes he can hold the gavel, and sometimes he can hold the lightsaber. And also, it's inside. One more thing inside the whole NFT thing. The gorilla is, for some reason, a highly appreciated. Or the gorilla or the ape, actually, the ape is a highly appreciated animal because the largest project that exploded in the NFT sphere had its base character as an ape.
Okay, cool. I did not know that. What project was that?
Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Oh, I think I have heard of that.
Yeah, they're a multi-billion business at the moment, inside their own metaverse with their tokenomics, with contracts, with various brands, M&M, Adidas. It's insane what they've managed to do. And now a lot of artists and public figures who have purchased their NFTs animated the said illustration. And for example, now Eminem and Snoop Dogg have concerts, virtual concerts under the form of those illustrations.
That is very, very cool. I mean, and that's maybe not to that size, but hopefully the Freemasonry and Aether Lodge can grow something similar. You know, and to my understanding, right, the way you're going to grow this thing is if you have, it doesn't have to be Masons, but people purchasing these NFTs. Now, I don't know if that's the only way. Like, how does a NFT project like this grow?
Its community is its blood, essentially. So the larger the community, the more people talk about it, the bigger the project grows. So, for example, in our case, the more Freemasons talk about it, the more Grand Lodges can hear about it, the more Freemasons can hear our story and our point of view, that it essentially does not cost anything to try and see how Freemasonry might have a presence inside a virtual world.
And in terms of that community, right? How are you developing that community? Where can it be found? I know you have like Discord, for example. What are some of the ways that you've been growing that community?
Social media mostly. Twitter is our Twitter is the first barrier where we try to popularize the project. Of course, we have the website behind it as well, but Twitter is the main channel which we use to popularize the whole project, and then gather everybody on our Discord server. Anybody who sees our Twitter account then simply goes to our Discord server, where we chat. We try and discuss profanes with Freemasons. We try to discuss about Freemasonry, about how our lives are going, or have casual talks.
That's an interesting word that you used. Twitter as being the first barrier, and I like the word barrier there, because I think a lot of people who maybe don't spend a lot of time on social media from a promotion standpoint, from a business standpoint, right? They view any social media, we'll use Twitter, as like it's you jump on there and your tweet goes to the world type of thing. But when you're trying to get critical mass and you're trying to build communities, barriers, you kind of got to get over a wall. Twitter's not just going to promote your stuff.
Definitely
You have to find a way to get over that initial wall. And how's it been for Aether Lodge? Like, how have you managed to get through the algorithmic barrier, if that's the word to use? How do you push past it and get your stuff to that critical mass stage?
In this stage, we tried not to feed the algorithm with money, because if we pay for ads, that's overdoing it. And then the moment we stop paying for ads, then the algorithm pushes us back, and we will have even a smaller reach. So at the moment, what we're trying to do is tweet as much as possible. We're also writing some nice articles on the topic of Freemasonry and the virtual world and the Metaverse. We are posting on Facebook groups, both Masonic and NFTs. We contacted you. We were sending emails to podcasts. We got into a nice friendship relationship with the Square magazine, which is from the United Grand Lodge of England. And the guys are amazing. They really liked our project, and they were active in offering advice, feedback. Maybe you should do this, maybe you shouldn't do this, try looking at a bigger picture. They even have a couple of articles about us, which was amazing. And I again am extremely grateful to them for that. It was very nice. So we're trying to do this traditionally without paying money for ads. That's not necessarily a great practice, because it means you're overdoing it. You're eager to sell. Why would one be so eager to sell? We're trying to grow our community in a organic manner. Just slow and steady, and having quality people who are interested in the topic. That's about it. Oh, and we're addressing. We try and address many young people from the civil society, because unfortunately we are aware that, at least in Europe, Freemasonry has an aging problem. So we're trying to present Freemasonry in a fun way towards a young demographic, which might at some point be interested in joining.
Now, for myself, I have, beyond checking out some podcasts about it, things, I have no practical experience in the world of cryptocurrency, in the world of NFTs, right? I have no wallet, no anything of that nature. If I wanted to get involved or purchase an NFT from Aether Lodge, I suppose from anywhere really, but from Aether Lodge, like, how does one go about doing that? And again, what are the risks of purchasing NFTs? What are the possible benefits? What am I getting into, and what are the steps to start?
We have a nice, very easy guide on our website and on our Discord for this. It's essentially very simple. The first step is to create a wallet, a virtual wallet, a cryptocurrency wallet, which it's extremely simple. The largest one that works with the blockchain that we are on is called MetaMask. So it's essentially download the app for iOS or Android, or as a Chrome extension or whatever. You just click next, and then you have your first wallet. Then the second step would be to have funds inside that wallet, which can be done through various forms. You can either purchase the cryptocurrency straight in your wallet using Apple Pay or your card or whatever, or you already have the funds somewhere in an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, which are the largest, and you simply transfer them into that wallet. The third step would be to go to our website, very important note, we haven't started selling any NFTs yet because we're still growing the community. The third step would be going to our website or whatever NFT website, click buy or mint, which is more or less equal to buy or create in this context. Connect your wallet to the website, press next, and then select the number of NFTs that you want to purchase. You validate the transaction, and that's about it. Your funds go outside your wallet, and then your NFT enters your wallet, the chunk of code, and then you can say it in your wallet. It's essentially like paying for groceries at a POS.
How much do you expect like an NFT to cost, and are there like variations? Are there more expensive NFTs, less expensive NFTs? How would that work in terms of trying to decide which NFT I want to mint?
It's all our NFTs will have the same price. So essentially, we did this because we have several tiers of rarity. Like we have degrees, so to say. We have DAs, which will be the most, the FCs, the masters, and the worshipful masters. And of course, the worshipful masters will be the rarest. So in order to avoid having higher prices on whatever category of scarcity, we have a flat price for every NFT. The buyer will not know what NFT he or she bought until a further date. For example, 72 hours after buying, your NFT will be revealed inside your wallet, and then you will see whether you have a worshipful master or an entered apprentice. This way we can keep the flat price. We will not have people just gathering for one certain category. And it's like, those cards. We used to have some cards when we were little where we would collect them with Pokemon and with Harry Potter and with Batman, and then fill in a catalog. You would never know what card you get. It was a surprise. So yeah, we will have a flat price for everything. We will have a pre-sale for people who have been with our community from the beginning. Brethren, people from the civil society, people who won their places in the pre-sale for a discount, and then the limited quantity, of course. And then we will have the public sale, which will be for anyone who would like to purchase one of our NFTs.
And what?
I am sorry, but I cannot hear you.
Oh, can you get me now?
Yeah.
There you go. What stage are you at currently in terms of Aether Lodge? I mean, you talked about building the community. Is there like a point at which, a number at which the community will be sufficient, or like how will you gauge when you're ready and when Aether Lodge is ready to take the next step or the next steps?
Well, at the moment, everything is finished when it comes to artwork and the code behind the whole blockchain thing. So the art and technology we're good on that. Now we're just building the community. We essentially aim to reach around 20,000 people on our Discord channel. And then we will start selling the NFTs.
And how, or was there, or how much, how nervous were you and your colleagues? Was there any nerves, and how much, how little, when it came to starting this project? Because, like I said, this is really, to my knowledge, the first time a Masonic body, lodge, Grand Lodge, whatever it is, has just Masons have attempted to, engage in blockchain, engage in NFTs, engage in this space in an actual organized way, as opposed to just Masons on their own will invest or whatever it is. This is the first time I've seen Freemasonry in this space. So were there nerves getting started? And if so, how'd you deal with them?
Well, to begin with, it's super important to mention that we do not represent our Grand Lodge. We do not even represent our lodge. We are just two friends who happen to be Freemasons. Me and my partner, Matteo, the co-founder. We are two friends who happen to be Freemasons and to like the topic a lot of Freemasonry, and decided, hey, how about we should try and do this whole Freemasonry blockchain metaverse thing. We do not want to represent a Grand Lodge at the moment, because it is very important. We will not offer degrees. Our Aether Lodge does not have a ritualistic character. So we are not a Masonic body. We cannot offer degrees. We can offer education on the topic of Freemasonry. We would love at some point, this is our goal, and this is what we dream about, is to create the Masonic presence in the metaverse, a space where the civil society can learn more about Freemasonry, such as the Freemasons Hall in London. Yeah, you can have the civil society visiting, purchasing stuff. And at the same time, you would also have the brothers who would be able to meet in that place and conduct their works. We still need a lot more awareness on topic for that, and we need to also advance the technology a bit. But I am a strong believer that at some point we will get there. And you asked me about whether we were nervous or not. It was crazy in the beginning because we were all over the place. Ideas were jumping all around. Let's do that. No, let's do some other thing. How it should look. The project changed. The details of the project change a lot of times from the beginning. The thing that remained is the main idea of having the Masonic presence in the Metaverse and raising the awareness of Freemasonry in general and Freemasonry in the Metaverse in particular.
And how do you and how does Aether Lodge deal with deal with the haters, deal with the more conservative members? Because I think almost any Mason who's tried to do something different or unique or new has run into more conservative brethren, disagreeing, sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly. How have you dealt with any of the pushback you've received? Because it's funny, you can have 50 people really love your idea, but if 5 people hate your idea, those 5 people tend to be a lot louder than the 50 who like it.
Yeah,
so how have you dealt with that? And what advice would you have for any, it doesn't have to be in the NFT space, but just in general, any Masons trying to do something different or new or bring new ideas forward? What have you learned in this process that you would, give it as advice to another Mason?
Well, the thing that I have learned is, first and foremost, people are not Freemasons. People are people. People are human, and they're prone to making mistakes. That's why we, at least as Freemasons, try and constantly polish the inner rough stone. So, of course, we've had a lot of brethren who absolutely hated this idea. And yes, as you said, we're extremely loud. But we try and cover as much of the educational part as possible by writing articles, by discussing one-on-one, so on and so forth. And we try and explain, because as far as I was able to understand, the more conservative brethren are afraid of 2 things. The first one is that they will get scammed somehow, and the second one, that some virtual Freemasonry will replace traditional Freemasonry, and then they will no longer have the toy to play with, essentially. And we're trying to discuss and present them as two complementary things, having physical and virtual Freemasonry. And at this point in time, the virtual Freemasonry is super far from the whole physical Freemasonry, ritualistical Freemasonry. It's just a education point, information point, social club where people discuss about Freemasonry. So we try and cover as much as possible from the education part, and we try and be respectful to everybody. We are aware that we are prone to making mistakes. What I would say is it's super important to constantly polish that inner rough stone. And remember our teachings, remember that we need to employ critical thinking, and we need to have an open mind, no matter what. Listening will always be beneficial instead of just talking. Gathering information will always be more beneficial than bombing with information and loud opinions, so to say. So with anyone who actually this advice, in my opinion, would go to both Freemasons and the people from the civil society trying to do something new, may that be a Masonic project in the Metaverse or whatever project, is, trial and error. So long as you do your good research, then you might as well try it. We would not be developing as a human species if we wouldn't be trying, trial and error.
Yeah. Do you think that Freemasons are, and I'm not sure what the numbers are like in Romania, in North America, our numbers are dropping pretty rapidly in terms of numbers of Freemasons. And it seems that with that drop, one thing I've noticed, and it does concern me, is it seems like where Masons are becoming kind of more and more afraid of trial and error, or at least of the error part, because the theory is, we don't want to do anything to, if our numbers are already dropping, we don't want to make a mistake and have those numbers drop even faster. But to me, that seems like a counterintuitive point of view, because if your numbers are dropping pretty rapidly, why not take a risk? It seems like the perfect time to do it. If the other option is just let things go as they're going, while the situation is not going to improve. It just seems that as things become more difficult, human beings have a tendency to become more and more risk averse, but that seems that the opposite of what should be done.
Exactly. As we were discussing to our friends in the UGLE in the UK, we're coming back to the problem that I raised earlier. It's the aging of Freemasonry, especially in the West. In Romania, it's more of a particular situation because we are a fairly young Freemasonry. We were a communist country until '89, and Freemasonry was outlawed during that time. So there's maybe a little more secrecy here and interest towards the secrecy, but the aging of Freemasonry is a real problem. And if someone doesn't start coming with solutions, our numbers will drop drastically because the population of Freemasons is aging. There aren't many new people coming, especially young people. And I believe that Freemasonry, not only it needs new people, it needs young minds who are up to date, who maybe can offer a new point of view, maybe some out of the box thinking, maybe, having this low aversion to risk that you were mentioning, and being more forth and being hands-on the problem. The virtual Freemasonry or not, traditional Freemasonry must find a way to solve the aging problem. This is probably the one thing that threatens Freemasonry the most, in my opinion, at least.
It's one of the big ones, that's for sure. The aging problem is a major problem. And I'm happy that you're taking, you and Matteo, I'm happy that you're putting some effort in to solve it, because we need more out of the box, more different. We need more people trying different things. And I really do like the way you're going about it in terms of not linking it with any particular lodge or Grand Lodge, which is the same thing with this podcast. The same thing with almost every Masonic podcast out there. And, it's because the danger of linking a project to a particular Masonic body is, it's harder to do trial and error, because the error then affects the body it's linked to. And, you're running through the extra hoops of whatever the bureaucracy is of that Masonic body, of that lodge. I think you're absolutely right. I think the smart way to go about it is to start outside of the official channels, make sure they're aware of it, but you start outside of it. And if it's successful, it can be folded into the larger Masonic organization, and Grand Lodges can then join, as opposed to trying to start something within that bureaucracy. I've seen it, I've said the best way to make sure nothing happens in Freemasonry is to ask to form a committee. Because once
exactly.
It seems like a much better approach to doing so. I do know it can, I've seen it, it can create some, on the one hand, it can create some resentments among some members, like who are they to start their own thing over here? But it can also create some interest where people want to know what's going on over there, So there's drawbacks, but I do think your approach is correct. Start it outside of official channels and see how it grows.
We wanted to play it as safe as possible. We do our best to raise this project and give life to it, but as you mentioned earlier, the haters might come and they might want to throw the stone. I want them, if anybody wants to throw a stone, I'd like them to do it towards us, not towards our lodge or our Grand Lodge. So we're here. That's why one of the many reasons why we chose to be public, or to have our identities public, because if you go on our website, you can find our pictures, our LinkedIn accounts, and then you can get in touch with us. So in case somebody would want to throw that rock, just, here we are. Just, we're the one who are guilty. Don't direct your hate towards, I don't know, Grand Lodge, some innocent body that doesn't really care.
Well, if you do want to throw rocks, you can throw them at me too. I'd stand in front of it, because I think, and this isn't meant as any type of financial advice or anything of that nature. It just, in terms of Freemasonry, I 100% think Freemasons need to be engaged in all aspects of the world, including the virtual world. And we need to be paying attention to things like NFTs and cryptocurrencies and the ledgers. Like, we, as much as perhaps some conservative members, some of whom I love very much as they may want sometimes to act as though Freemasonry is a kind of a bubble in and of itself, it's still, like you said it, earlier, right? Freemasons aren't Freemasons. Freemasons are people first, and we're part of the world, and all of these things, we can't push them out forever. They're part of the world, and we need to figure out how to integrate them to make a more fulsome Masonic experience. And so
exactly. And moreover, Freemasonry has a lot to offer in terms of teachings, in terms of charity. Yeah. Why be secret about the whole thing? Just because we have some, I don't know, old rituals, which okay, they're nice nowadays, but they're no longer the essence of Freemasonry. The essence of Freemasonry is inside us, and the work that we do towards the other members of the society. Yeah, we have a lot to offer. Teachings, charity, kindness. So why be secretive about it?
No, I agree completely. And I want to thank you for you and, Matteo, your team. I want to thank you, Cattle. I think I had the names of your team, all four of you, for, the work that you're doing, whether it succeeds or fails. I'm rooting for it to succeed. I hope yours will probably be my first and only NFT I ever purchase. So, because I just, and I'm not purchasing it as because I understand some people purchase it as like a speculative property, is plan to sell it down the line if it increases in value. I have no clue. I have no clue whether your NFTs will increase in value or decrease in value, or how that works. It's more, I feel like it might be fun to own an NFT, but it's more because what you're trying to do, I think, is important, and I appreciate it. So if I purchase it and it does, it just sits in my wallet forever, it's still, I think this is just me speaking. I don't speak for anybody else. I think it's worth supporting, because it seems like we need to be in this world,
And we're super grateful for the support. It's important to us to know that there are brethren who believe in our idea and who believe in this direction, and we're not the only madmen on this planet who believe that maybe we should have a virtual Freemasonry and some virtual education point in terms of Freemasonry. And we are super grateful, and I want to thank you for having me, and I speak on behalf of my team, at your podcast here. I do hope we'll get to talk some more. I'm sure we can share a lot of stories, but we're super grateful, and we thank you, and we encourage anyone who has questions about Aether Lodge or about us to just write us on our social media channels. We're open to discuss anytime, and we're open to meet people throughout the world, from anywhere around the world. It's enlarging the Masonic chain.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to, I'll leave the link for Aether Lodge in the description to this video. Maybe some Twitter accounts, things like that. Definitely, check it out. Leave a comment if you have any experience with cryptocurrency, with NFTs, all that jazz. Let me know. And thank you so much for joining me all the way, basically from halfway around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you once more. Stay safe, and I cannot wait to talk to you again soon.